It's exactly 8:35 a.m. Central African Time, and our next guest is based in the US, in California. That means he is about 9 hours behind us, 11 hours. I think it's 9 hours behind us. Anyway, it is the middle of the night there, and we do appreciate the fact that Jeffrey Mackler has made time available for us in the middle of the night to talk about the issue, and a very worrying issue, I might add. It has to do with Israel having approved a budget of $1.5 billion to prepare for a possible attack on Iran's nuclear facilities. This was revealed by the media on Monday, local media, and according to Israeli channel 12 TV, the monies will come out of their current budget, with the balance coming from the new budget for awaiting approval in November. So that is truly worrying indeed, and I'm also wondering how the Iranians have responded to this bit of news. Undoubtedly not happy at all, and we'll try and get someone to talk to us from the Iranian side, to give their perspective, but that will have to wait till tomorrow. Now, my guest is an American activist from San Francisco, California. His name is Jeffrey Mackler. He is the National Secretary of Socialist Action, a Trotskyist political party, and he is here to talk to us about this matter. Jeffrey, good morning from South Africa. It's good evening or good night in that part of the world. Appreciate you staying up to talk to us.
Well, thank you for calling me. I heard your question, but barely. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. We are
Great.
Looking at...
Thank you for having me. The fact that the Israeli government has a program to plan and prepare attacks on the Iranian government is not new. Israel is the number one recipient in the world of U.S. aid. Usually the U.S. war budgets some $2 billion a year for the Zionist state of Israel. Because the United States government, whether it be in the Trump leadership or the current Biden leadership, views Israel as its proxy in the Middle East. So threatening to bomb the nuclear refining plant, Natanz, in Iran is not new. The Israelis have bombed it several times, each time denying it. But top U.S. officials work directly with the Israeli intelligence agency, the Mossad, and as top Americans have repeatedly said, the Israelis rarely do anything that the Americans are not aware of. The Israeli government has assassinated nuclear scientists from Iran, and it has a long history of trying to bring down the regime. So, for example, a combination of the United States and NATO and the Gulf state monarchies, supported by Israel, basically armed a massive Al-Qaeda terrorist force to remove the Assad regime. And they were responsible in the war against Syria for the murder of some 500,000 Syrians and the destruction of the Syrian economy and the driving of half the people into internal or external exile. The Israelis supported this all along and continued to bomb Syria in the interest of the United States and also to defend the occupied territories in the Golan Heights. The United States has a long-standing alliance with Israel to bring down the Iranian regime. And that was defeated when the Iranians called on their militias with support and calling of the Assad government to defeat the U.S., Israel, NATO combined forces that were aimed at establishing a U.S. government in Iraq, in Syria. The U.S. government has a long checkered history in relations to Iran. So, for example, the United States installed the Shah of Iran in a 1953 coup, and Iran dutifully turned over its oil resources to U.S. corporations. In 1979, the Iranians had a revolution that mobilized the largest demonstrations in the history of the world and drove the Shah out. The response of the United States was to fund the government of Saddam Hussein in an 8-year war against Iraq, the Iran-Iraq war against Iran that killed 1 million Iranians and 800,000 Iraqis. The United States, unusually, at that time was a backer of Saddam Hussein. And a few years later, at the end of that war, the United States decided that they want a share of Iraqi oil. So they basically argued that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, in the same way that the Zionist state argues that the Iranian government is refining nuclear fuel in order to make nuclear weapons. Every international inspection team, whether it be the United Nations or International Atomic Energy Commission, that has inspected Iran, which has opened up the full inspection, demonstrates that Iran has no intention and has no plan to create nuclear weapons. The real interest of the United States, which is the reason why they increased the sanctions on Iran with Israeli help, is to steal Iranian oil. The United States sanctions massively the two largest oil resource nations on earth, and that is the Venezuelans and the Iranians. They want to bring down the economy. They want to prevent the sale of competitive oil on world markets. And Israel is the number one ally of the United States in every single one of its international ventures. I should say that the Zionist, racist, colonial state, which oppresses Palestinian people and occupies Palestine since 1948, the forced partition, the United States has supported every act of Israel since its formation. So I don't believe that there is an immediate threat. The Israelis are simply putting pressure on the Iranians to sign up again to the nuclear deal, which means that if Iran agrees to even further inspections, the United States will back off on sanctioning its economy.
Okay, so let me, Jeffrey, I'm going to put this question to you and then I'll go for an ad break. Despite that, Israel remains ambiguous about its own nuclear weapons, it is not a signatory to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and doesn't allow international inspectors into its nuclear facilities at Dimona in the Negev Desert. So, I mean, really?
Well,
Jeffrey?
I don't think there's anyone on the planet Earth who believes that Israel does not have nuclear weapons. A nuclear scientist from Israel told the truth about that and served some decades in jail for revealing the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons and constantly threatens war against other Middle Eastern nations in alliance with the United States. Basically, Israel functions in the Middle East as the U.S. surrogate in order to help the United States control the oil and oppress the poor people of that region.
Okay, let's go for an ad break. We'll come back and continue the discussion.
Sure.
Every 60 seconds, a silent pandemic claims the life of a child. Unsafe water is having a devastating global impact on health and livelihoods. Islamic Relief is at the forefront, providing clean and safe water to vulnerable communities around the world. Our tailored approach to sustainable water solutions enable families not just to survive, but to thrive, ensuring they stay healthy and safe. Give water, give life with Islamic Relief.
Looking to get your kick? Kiki's have now reopened on 235 Matthews Maiwa Road in Durban. Head on over for the Taste with Kick. We offer something scrumptious for everyone in the family. Wraps, chicken tikka, burgers, tender grills, mocktails, milkshakes, and so much more. Corporate and events catering available. Visit our social media pages for more info or call 031 209 0119. Kiki's, the Taste with Kick.
Reliable access to clean water could save thousands of lives each day. With proper sanitation and easy access to fresh, clean water, communities can flourish. Our Thirst Relief Appeal provides clean water to communities in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East by building deep wells and providing sustainable water and hygiene solutions. A monthly donation of as little as 700 Rand could build a well for a community in need. That's only 23 Rand a day. Donate today. www.pennyappeal.org.za or call 031 11 00 573. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
These days, I'm more health conscious than ever. So tonight, it's stir fry for dinner, cooked in healthy Helios pure sunflower cooking oil. Helios is pure sunflower goodness, packed with omega-6. That's good for your heart, and is approved as part of the Heart and Stroke Foundation eating plan.
Dinner's ready!
Helios, pure sunflower cooking oil. A healthy family is a happy one.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness. And every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and freezer card calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Africa. As the crisis in Palestine continues, the Africa Muslims Agency teams are on the ground facilitating emergency food and medical assistance to the affected families. Donate 15,000 Rand or an amount and help the people of Palestine. Call AMA now on 083-251-9376 or donate online at africamuslimsagency.co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, inspiring the spirit of giving.
With up to 97% of Gaza's water supply unfit for human consumption, desalinated water is the only hope to avoid catastrophe. The Al-Imdad Foundation has been operating desalination plants and delivering safe water in the Gaza Strip since 2014. Help us continue providing clean, safe drinking water in Gaza by donating your lila or sadaqah today. Visit alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Salam Media, a global voice for humanity.
Welcome back, and just to give you a rundown on what's coming on the show in the next hour, we'll be talking with Empower South Africa Cycle Tour, obviously with African Muslim agencies. Also on the show, we'll be talking to, in Councillor's Corner, to Refilwe Ncheke. She's the DA mayoral candidate for Ekurhuleni. And then we will be talking with Angelique Coetzee, chairperson for the South African Medical Association, for more information around the vaccinating of children aged between 12 and 17 years of age. Of course, we're talking COVID-19 there. But right now we are still connected with our guest Jeffrey Mackler. He is an American activist from San Francisco. He is the National Secretary for Socialist Action, a Trotskyist political party. I do want to unpack that theory in a minute or two, but let's get done with this issue around Iran and supposed nuclear weapons. So back to you, Jeffrey, and even though you don't believe Israel will attack Iran, they're just making threats, they're trying to possibly corner Iran. But let's look at the worst case scenario, and that they do go ahead and attack Iran or its nuclear sites. What sort of repercussions could we expect? And could this, and I know I'm going to be very extremist in what I say next, could this then possibly be the start of the Third World War? And who would support Iran in their defense against the Israelis? As we do know, there are a couple of Saudi regimes who are very pro-Israel.
My view is to support the right of all poor and oppressed nations to self-determination, even if I disagree with the governments of those countries. I notice today that the recent election in Iran, the largest party who won the largest votes was led by the Shiite cleric Muqtada al-Sadr. That's an interesting election result, because when the United States invaded Iran in 2003, Muqtada al-Sadr, with the help of the Iranians, was the main force that physically opposed the U.S. war. The reason for his popularity among the Iranian people is because he helped drive the United States out. When the United States destroyed Iraq, rewrote its contract in oil, took over the resources, installed a government, including the president, and ran that country until this very day, where the United States has been forced to leave. Israel supported the U.S. occupation. Israel supported the U.S. war on Syria. The fact is that Israel has been periodically and regularly firing missiles, bombs, dynamiting Iran for many, many years, attacking its main nuclear research center at Natanz, attacking its research facilities across the Iranian state, and periodically assassinating Iranian scientists, that is, nuclear scientists, despite the fact that there is no evidence whatsoever. So you're right. The Israelis act with impunity because they believe they're backed by the most powerful military in the world. By the way, the Israelis are like the sixth most powerful military in the world, but they're backed by American imperialism, which spends more money on weapons of war, the largest military budget in the world, at over $1 trillion a year. The United States backs Iran, so if backs Israel. And if Israel attacks Iran, the idea is that if the Iranians respond, it'll be annihilated not only by Israeli arms, but by the United States. So the Iranians are in a terrible situation, as are all the poor and oppressed nations in the world. If they fight back against American coups, American sanctions, American drone wars, assassination wars, special operation wars, death squad wars, they are subject to being obliterated. No one in the world in their right mind wants to see a nuclear war. But the United States has more nuclear weapons than the rest of the world combined. The United States has 1,100 military bases around the world in over 158 countries. That is almost everywhere. Russia has Russia has troops in perhaps 3 countries, and China 1. So the United States is the world cop, so to speak, and it backs its client Israel in order to advance the interests of the American oil corporations, whether they operate in Venezuela or Iraq or Iran or everywhere else. Unless you understand that the billionaires who run the United States, who own the major oil companies, who have clients among the Gulf state monarchies, who keep them in power, there's no rational basis of understanding politics. It's the same with Israel. Israel did not exist prior to 1948. There was one Middle Eastern nation that was basically a British colony, and that was Palestine. It was divided against the wishes of the Palestinian people, who were 98% of the population when it became a British mandate after World War I. Palestine was forcibly divided. Its people were driven into exile in all of the surrounding nations. And now the Zionist state of Israel occupies some 85% of historic Palestine. And when the Palestinians decide to fight back, the United States calls them terrorists. And the Israelis use the armed weapons of the most powerful nation on earth to further destroy the Palestinian people. It has reduced them to basically a segregated, apartheid, poverty-stricken portion of Palestine called Gaza, and the West Bank, where the United States continually drives the Palestinians off the land. So historic Palestine is still in the view of the oppressed Palestinian people. But anyone who dares to say that they are against the occupation, not to mention the fact that they support the historic right of the Palestinian people to self-determination, or a democratic, secular Palestine with the right of the majority of the people to return to their homeland and their land, is considered an anti-Semite in the United States. But that is waning. When Israel attacked the Palestinians last year, we saw the largest protest in the history of the United States in support of the Palestinian people. The youth of the United States support Palestine in the way they support any poor and oppressed nation, whether it be Nicaragua or Venezuela or the coup that the United States backed in Bolivia or South Africa and so on. Remember, the United States was the prime backer of the apartheid South African state. And even after independence in South Africa, the United States designated the president of that country and the ANC as a terrorist organization until just recently.
All right. I'm going to have to stop you there, unfortunately. We're running out of time. I need to get you back on air to talk about the supposed new super emerging power, and that is China. And would they then, what's that dynamic going to look like, China and the USA? But we'll leave that for another time. In 1 minute, I'd like you to share with me Trotsky's theory for permanent revolution. And I know that you are obviously secretary of Socialist Action, a Trotskyite political party. Is this in direct answer to the very pro-greed, pro-capitalistic world we live in?
Well, first, we're a Trotskyist party. Trotskyite is the term that Stalin used to discredit us. Second, China is no longer, in our view, a revolutionary state. Capitalism has been restored in that country. there are more billionaires in China than there are in the United States. There are over 1,000 Chinese billionaires. They own massive amounts of property, real estate, manufacturing industries, and so on. The Chinese are totally integrated into the world capitalist economy. They have the second largest economy in the world. For decades, they sold the Chinese people at near slave wages to American corporations. So American high-paying union jobs went to China, where 25 years ago...
Okay, unfortunately, Jeffrey, I am so sorry to cut you in mid-sentence, but we have run out of time, and we're having to take the news, but undoubtedly we will be in touch with you sometime soon. Thank you indeed for being up in the middle of the night to talk with us here in South Africa.
Thank you, and I appreciate your having me.
We appreciate your time. Have a good day until the next time. It is 9:02. This is News and Views with me, Julie Ali.